Welcome to the Good Divorce Show. Not every divorce needs to end in disaster. It's time to see divorce in another perspective. Here to help with that is your host, Karen McNinney.
Hello, this is Karen at the Good Divorce Show. Today we are chatting with two individuals, Erin and Mitch, who are 10 years post-divorce. So happy to have you with us on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. We're very happy to be here.
Hi, Karen. Thanks for having us.
As we were chatting just before we hit the record button, these are simply stories so that we can give our listeners an example of what a healthy, vibrant family can look like post-divorce. Tell us a little bit about the family structure and what was happening in the history that led into the marriage and then led into the divorce.
So, Mitch and I both came from divorced families. But when we got together, we sort of had that history, both of us. But we dated for 3 years and then were married for 8. And then, sort of at the end of our marriage, we had 2 kids along the way who, at the time that we separated, were 11 and 13. We had empathy for the situation that they were in. I think we did a really good job of prioritizing that from the beginning.
Right. Mitch, what do you remember from your own experience as a child of divorce and what you knew you wanted to avoid?
Oh, yeah. I was, and just to go back, so our kids are 13, 13, the girl's 13 and the boy's 11 now. When we got divorced, our daughter was about 5.5 and our son was about 3. And I was kind of in that age when my parents got divorced. I remember it just being a real kind of clear demarcation, where my dad went out of the house and then there was no more talking between the two of them. And there was just kind of this cloud. I think that kind of reverberated through mine and my siblings' upbringing. And it's something, it was like Erin said, it was a commonality that Erin and I shared, where we just remember that kind of, that mood and that atmosphere that wasn't good for us between our parents at the time. And our parents, I think, Erin's parents, my parents, they were doing the best they could. They're working hard in their lives and trying to move on. And they were also doing, going along with a lot of what our culture was asking of them in their gender roles as divorced parents. But it just, that kind of like fallout from it was obviously kind of a bummer for, as a kid and growing up.
Yeah, understandably. And Erin, what do you remember from your experience? What did that look like as a child for you?
Yeah, I think so. I was I was 6 or 6.5 when my parents divorced. And, for me, I think it was the same, like life changed a lot, right? It's interesting because I come from a very religious family. My dad's a Lutheran minister and my mom comes from a family of like clergy and teachers. Mm-hmm. So, I think there was this effort for them to do things, they really wanted to do things right. But there was also a lot of stigma around divorce at the time. And also, I think probably a lot of stigma around a Lutheran minister getting divorced. So I think afterwards, there was a lot of the focus wasn't put on the kids. The focus was, my mom was rebuilding her life. My dad was kind of focusing on his congregation and working a ton. And I think that there was sort of some inadvertent neglect that happened for the kids, where it like our interests and our priorities were not at the forefront. So we were kind of like shuffled around a lot. My mom moved a ton and we were, that my parents tried to be so fair that they actually shot themselves in the foot, and like at one point my parents each took there was my sister and I, sort of in the fallout, and they each took my parents each took a child, and then they would like switch every 6 months, and we would start at a different school and be with a different parent. And
oh, wow.
And there was a lot of like pieces of education that I missed, where it was learned at one of the schools and then I'd switch, and then it would have already been learned in the new school. So there were just like chunks of education that I missed because of how curriculum was different at different elementary schools.
And did you and your sister, what was your relationship like with her during that experiment of parenting between houses?
I think it definitely drove a wedge, because we didn't have that like bond. Like we could have been like a support for each other, but we just weren't around each other enough to be able to like commiserate or say like, gosh, this is crazy. Mom did this or dad did that. Or, like we didn't have a confidant in each other. We didn't have that kind of like closeness that you hope for siblings.
Sure.
We just weren't in each other's orbit enough.
Yes. Certainly in our family, my husband and I identify that our kids are so close, and they're the constant relationship that moves between our homes and our lives. The parents, we almost become the secondary because we only spend part of our contact time with them, whereas they really have each other. And I always felt what a blessing that they've had each other through this journey. And that relationship is really, really tight. And as they get ready to launch into college, they're having their own heartbreak of not living together anymore, not being together. So as you put all of this experience of your own childhoods, and it's now simmering in the soup pot of your own life, and your marriage starts to get wobbly, I can only imagine that some of that PTSD or concern was starting to bubble up for yourselves.
Yeah. And I think, no one goes into marriage wanting or expecting to divorce. And I think, for me, it just brought up a lot of like, am I failing? Have we done something wrong? How can we get back on track? Is there a different, is there a way out of this that isn't divorce? Is there a way that we can, figure out how to make it work?
Sure. And like many couples, you went to counseling. And Mitch, just talk a little bit about that decision and that work, and why you would still say that marital counseling was valuable in this relationship.
Yeah, I think that Erin said it also, because we both had a very kind of willful attitude towards, keeping this marriage going. And in many ways that's admirable. In the end, it was misplaced because we were kind of just holding on, like gripping it, right? And part of that was us saying, hey, we need an outsider to help us out. I it's funny because we went to marriage counseling, and we worked with a wonderful woman, and it was lovely. And we jumped in and got some communication tools, and we got some clarity. Along the way, I was sharing this with friends, and I remember talking to my coworker, and he had a bit of a cynical eye, and he's like, oh man, marriage counseling never works. Like, look at the stats, man. Like, you're just going to a divorce. Just rip the Band-Aid off. And it's an expensive Band-Aid once you throw a marriage counselor in. It's just a waste of money. And so, but it was a great process for me and Erin, because we had great conversations, not just in the room, but I remember a lot of our drives back and our conversations at home. We were taking those communication tools and figuring out what we wanted, and figuring out each other's needs, and figuring out they weren't working within this structure of marriage. They weren't working for us individually and as a couple. So it was a really awesome process. And, I would give Erin credit in that I think Erin kind of comes to understanding a little bit earlier than I do. And she'll sometimes kind of just wait for me. And it was that moment where I think, we had kind of a conversation where we let go of that tight grip we were holding on trying to keep this marriage together, and all of the reasons we were telling ourselves, including it's what's best for the kids. And we came to a different understanding and shared understanding of, hey, it doesn't work, and that's okay. And we went in to our next couples counseling session, and I remember Erin was like, hey, so, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. And, Mitch and I have decided that we're getting a divorce. And the counselor was crestfallen. She was like, what? This is a shock. I'm so surprised. We were doing such great work in here. And I really thought we were, going places. And I really thought we were on the right track. And Erin spent the next 15 or 20 minutes consoling the marriage counselor that you're great. You're great at what you do. It's not you, it's us.
It's not you, it's us. Yeah. Do you remember that moment for yourself, Erin, where there was just clarity? I hear some couples talk about, we've been fighting for the marriage, but then how do we fight for the good divorce? There's still a relationship. The marriage is ending, but there's a forever relationship.
Yeah. It's funny because I remember, at the very end, after we kind of decided to divorce and we had a very it's going to make me emotional, but we had a very heartfelt conversation about that we were so grateful that we were going to be in each other's lives. I think we really depended on each other for friendship and, support, and that we were kind of relieved that we were going to be co-parenting together, that the marriage might be over, but we weren't going to disappear from each other's lives, that we were we were in it for the long haul. And I think we were actually and we joked, we're like, there's no one I would rather be divorced from. Because it wasn't just the divorce. It was that there was this guarantee of still being co-parents and partners in that way.
You're going to share grandbabies and graduations and soccer games and funerals and weddings, right? And I think people, when they're in that early decision-making point, they forget that those decisions cast a very long shadow and echo throughout not only your lives as parents, but your children's lives. And you reflected on how some of your parents' divorce decisions absolutely left a fingerprint in your life. And to also not lose sight, and I really hear it as the both of you talk about it, there's a love story in there. There's a reason we came together. There's a reason that we created these beautiful little babies together, and that we don't have to discard the goodness that still exists in the divorce. And for you, that's your co-parenting relationship. And Mitch, you identified that, you really have a high regard and respect for Erin as a parent, and vice versa. Why does that matter? How does that help you? And how did it help you approach this decision?
Yeah, I think, when you jump on and start talking about a good divorce and a little bit of the self-consciousness I bring into this conversation is what sense of authority or what secret sauce do I bring? Because it is just there's something I would say is just luck, right? About a good divorce, so to speak. And a big piece of that luck is Erin's a great parent. So, it's easy to, it's kind of like being dealt a winning hand on that front, where what did you do? And it contributes to some of the ease of being divorced and some of the joy of co-parenting when you got a collaborator who's as great at parenting as Erin is. So, it's hard to pat yourself on the back for what you do and how you manage a situation when, you're sitting on pocket aces on that front. So, it just, it allows me to trust a lot of the decisions that she brings as far as our co-parenting and her perspective on our kids and her insight on our kids. So in that respect, I think that that's just kind of an acknowledgement out there that I appreciate not everyone's in the same boat. And it's a dynamic that we have and that we're lucky to have, and I'm lucky to have. So I should stop talking on that front because
it's nice of you to gush on your first wife. There's no crime in that. Yes. What would you add, Erin?
Well, and I feel the same way. And I think that's also where Mitch and I really aligned at the beginning, was that we both really love our kids. And it's like, that was a common factor for both of us. And I have the same feeling about Mitch, where I'm so grateful that he is my kid's father, that he's so involved. And I know that, there can be this tendency for like either dads to like not be included after a divorce, as much as they probably should be, or for, resentments to get in the way, and for the parents to not be able to come together in a way that makes it easy for the kids to be shared evenly. And I guess I'm really grateful that Mitch wants to be as involved of a father as he is, because I'm grateful for the support, but I'm also grateful for my kids, that they have a great dad.
Wow, it's so beautiful. What a wonderful sentiment and reminder to folks. I've had a mentor who once said, it's important that you love your children more than you dislike their other parent. And when we put it like that, that's pretty easy to do. Or I should say, it's simple in theory and maybe not emotionally easy, because even as we talk to both of you as a good divorce, no doubt there's pain and grief and heartache that also came in the journey. And when we come back from our break with Erin and Mitch, we'll hear about the divorce process and how they were able to retain this mutual regard and respect on behalf of their children. Stay tuned.
Become our friend on Facebook. Post your thoughts about our shows and network on our timeline. Visit facebook.com/Voice America.
Before you call the lawyer, call the Good Divorce Coach. Give your family the gift of working with a certified divorce coach, a co-parenting specialist, and a mediator. Karen McNinney has the knowledge and skills to guide you through the full divorce journey, before, during, and after. It's one thing to get divorced. It's another to be divorced. The Good Divorce Coach will teach you and your partner how to be divorced with less drama, less destruction, and less debt. Visit thegooddivorcecoach.com to get in touch with Karen.
Have you become a member yet? Sign up now to become a member of Voice America. It's always free and easy. Plus, you get to take advantage of some great member benefits. Get unlimited access to millions of hours of on-demand content across all of our channels. Keep track of your favorite episodes, shows, and hosts in your own customizable library. Find out what shows you might be interested in based on your favorites. Plus, you get insider access with our newsletter. Membership gives you more. Sign up at voiceamerica.com and click register at the top right.
The Internet's #1 talk station. #1 talk station. VoiceAmerica.com.
Welcome back to the Good Divorce Show with Karen McNinney. Have a question for Karen or her guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5788. That's 866-472-5788. Now, back to the show with Karen.
Hello and welcome back to the Good Divorce Show. I'm Karen and I'm chatting with Erin and Mitch today. Married 8 years, now divorced 8 years. So they're moving into the longer part of their relationship. And I just wanted to ask you directly, Erin, as you and Mitch were really looking down the truth that this marriage is complete and coming to an end. Both of you brought your own story of divorce as adult children of divorce, trauma from that experience, wishing things had been different. What were the guiding principles that you leaned on as you were making your own decisions around this divorce journey?
Well, I think one thing that Mitch and I were both really clear on, a few things. One of them was that we did not want to have a contentious divorce. We had seen it happen, in our families, and we had seen it happen for a few friends. And I think we saw like how hard that was. And we had experienced how hard that can be on kids, like the kids who are involved. And for us, everything started to become like every decision that we made, every way that we interacted, whatever we decided about the schedule, like it all came down to the kids and what we thought was best for them. And it really made things like really clear and easy once we knew that was the focus. And that was one thing we were really aligned on, which I'm grateful for, because it was like a unifying, clarifying factor.
Right. And was that an easy place for you to arrive at as well, Mitch?
Yeah. And it sort of set the tone and set the pathway for a lot of our discussions and how we went about it. We got a mediator and felt like we were collaborative enough and shared enough values where we could kind of trust that process rather than, any other one. So it was definitely, you keep the kids in focus. You're in agreement, the vast majority of the time, because it's pretty clear what's going to be healthy for those kids.
I think just like our therapist, we really confused our mediator, because at mediation, we had like inside jokes and we were laughing, and we were, kind of once we got through this, kind of the initial like adjustment period of like, okay, this is what's happening and this is what we're doing. I think we kind of switched into a different mode pretty quickly, where we were like, we're still ourselves,
Tell me a little bit about the decisions that were made. I think listeners are curious did you have a family home? Did you have to sell it? Did someone stay in the home? The assets? Because you're right. There's the two parts of the divorce experience. One, the emotional untangling, but then there's all of this logistical. It's so easy to get married and it's really complex to get divorced.
Okay. So we had a family home, and I guess what I feel like this is like the right time to bring up this idea that I think, from the beginning, Mitch and I have been like, I feel like it's mutual, but I feel like sometimes I have reaped more of the benefits of it. But I feel like we've both been very generous with each other, and we had a family home, and like Mitch let me and the kids like live there, until it was like the right time to sell. And it was, so the kids and I were there, and that allowed them to have some consistency. And I feel like we sort of brought that spirit of like give and take a little bit to the whole process. So, besides the house, we didn't really have a ton of finances to split. So that kind of made it easy. And that was what we really wanted the mediator for, was like, tell us what's fair. What does the state of California say when it comes to, dividing up finances, and what's, how do the finances look moving forward? And, and then there were also some ways that like when it came to custody at the time, I was, we started out with this, it was a situation where I had the kids like 4 days a week and Mitch had them 3 days a week. And they were really, the kids were so young at the time, being 3 and 5, that we both kind of felt like, let's have them be around their mom a little bit longer, and then when it came to the summer, we kind of flipped the schedule to help everyone's like weekly schedule out. Cause it is a lot to be like, I was the parent who was on during the week, and then I'd have the weekends off, and then he was traveling, and, so he would have kids on the weekends, and he was traveling for work. So we kind of, we started off in a way that made sense for, kind of for everyone's needs. And then as we got a little further in, it was like, Mitch wanted, 50-50 custody. That's what he requested in the, in our divorce agreement. And it was really hard. Like, that's where I felt like, okay, I need to be generous, because it was hard to give up my kids, not have them every other week. And to feel like, it was really the time when I didn't have them, and them being so little, it was just like heartbreaking. And I was like, what did I do? And,
Mitch, what do you remember of that time and wanting to shift the schedule and the perspective of the father?
Yeah, I think what I would say, to echo Erin's sentiments, is that certain things, and I guess I'm sure it changes couple by couple, but certain things are black and white, and it's, that's not a worry. And other things, what I would describe, are works in progress, understanding that it's kind of an experimental process, right? Like, it doesn't work. Like, we didn't think about it, right? Where Erin's like, it seems delightful that I get all of my weekends, but on the flip side, I don't take my kids for a weekend trip, right? Like, it's not mommy's spa weekend. It's also a lost opportunity to go hiking, or, take them on a family trip.
Yeah. And I think also there are, like kind of like Mitch is saying, there are different things that are better for kids at different times. And I think, when the kids were younger, it was actually better for them to see each of us more frequently, right? So like it was, for the kids to be away from me or away from Mitch for an entire week when they were 3 and 5 was like, that would have been so confusing for them and hard on them. And, I think then as they got older, then it was like, it's actually to switch them all the time like that. Like they're old enough and they understand enough now where they won't feel abandoned, but now switching them and switching their stuff every 3 or 4 days is like it's so disruptive and disorienting that they can't like sink into life fully because they're anticipating the next move, and so it's kind of like figuring out how things needed to adjust along the way to like truly be better for them. And I think even in my agreeing to do like 50-50 custody, it was hard for me, but I think in the end, it was like the thing that made me agree to it was like, but this is best for them. It's best for the kids to have a father who's like fully present in their lives and not a weekend dad.
Simply by following your parenting intuition. And when I'm coaching couples, this is something we talk about a lot. I would say, your kids, the law, the court is going to expect you to write down a very rigid parenting plan. Do it, tuck it away, and then liberate your life on behalf of your children. So if someone's traveling, family's in town, we've got a special occasion, can we be flexible? It's the same thing we would do if we were living under the same roof, right? Parents have to coordinate childcare. Yeah. And so to think of that as a dynamic evolution over time is so wise. And you're absolutely right. And the research will show us that, under the age of 5 is really about attachment. It's where we sort of create that attachment style that's going to echo into our older relationships in life. So having access to both parents makes sense. And I think where parents get in trouble is they hold on to the rigidity of what has been written down, and they don't actually just look at the story that they're in, and that we are the authors of our family story.
Mitch, is in my case, I think one thing that really helps us is, like we were saying before, we trust each other as parents, but I think we really trust each other as co-parents. And we trust that like the ways that we're flexible, the other person is going to be flexible with us. Like when it comes to the schedule now, Mitch travels for work and I am doing some traveling as well. And I think that we are, we're really good at just like a little give and take here and there, that like whatever work trips Mitch has, like they take priority. He's got to do them. So then my schedule with the kids might change. I might pick up a day here or there, or, that kind of stuff. And I think that it's easy. It's like very easy to be generous with each other and flexible when we know the other person is going to reciprocate. And also that it like, again, it's better for everyone to not have conflict every time schedule change comes up. But there's a lot of stuff that's like beyond our control.
That's right. And to remember, behavior is contagious. So for those out there listening and thinking, my partner is never flexible, I'm like, well, if you bring it, then they'll start to trust it. And then that can become a reciprocal relationship. I am so curious how you both spoke to your children about this decision and the early transition into 2 homes.
Yeah, I remember we were on the same page, literally. We were sharing books that both of us were reading. We were looking at the same information about how to treat each other. So two pieces of advice that pop out in my memory before we told the kids is, we looked at different examples of how to, that meeting that you need to have with the kids. And Erin and I agreed on which one was best suited for us and for our kids and, their age. And then so you have that kind of momentous, sit down on it was in the holiday season, the Christmas tree's right there. And, you're going to just lay the hammer on these kids, which is devastating even in memory. But we had the tools in place and we were on the same page about it. So we could go about it together knowing that this was going to be the best way. Like, it's not a great situation for the kids, but we had some teamwork to go into that. And then, even something as a small detail that we came across in that information is, this one writer explained, when you speak bad about your co-parent in front of your kids, they take that as 50% them. They know that they are 50% their mom, they're 50% their dad. And that's an exaggerated form where, back to your point about behavior being contagious, it's not like we would ever disparage each other, but how you talk about your co-parent is telling your kids something.
Absolutely.
That's number one. Number two, Erin and I agreed, back to that kind of teamwork aspect. We agreed, okay, here are the principles we're taking into this divorce, how we're going to structure our time, how we're going to treat each other, and why and how we're going to put our kids first.
Mm-hmm. And so there's the conversation with the children, very thoughtful, very intentional. But then there's also the broader community. There's family and relatives and friends and school kids. And so, Erin, walk us down how that revealed something that started with a birthday party, I recall.
Yes. So at the time, I have to admit, I was not happy about it. But we had this very tight-knit group of friends from the preschool that we went to. We went to this great, very community-focused preschool, and tons of couples and tons of kids right around the ages of ours. And we really did not want anyone to feel like they had to choose between us.
Yes. How did you do that?
Oh my God. I actually this was, at the time, again, I was not happy about it because it felt so hard for me. But Mitch's birthday is in mid-January, and we had decided to divorce pretty much, right around the holidays. And we kind of rode the holidays out knowing what was coming, but wanting to, preserve the holidays for the kids as much as we could and kind of keep things together. So, and then we got to this point where we were, Mitch had moved out, but we still hadn't told our friends because it was so raw. And we knew that every time we'd be talking about it, it would be sad. So we kind of it got to be mid-January. We still hadn't told any of our friends. And we were actually friends of ours were hosting a birthday party for Mitch. And it got to be the night of, the before, and here we're not living together, but we're going to celebrate his birthday together. And I was like, what are we doing? I don't want to go and put on pretend at this party. I won't be able to hold it together. And Mitch is like, hold on a second. And he sends out an email to everyone who's coming to his birthday party. And our friends were saints for hosting this for us. And they didn't know what was coming. And he sent this email out to everyone and was like, hey, just want to let you know, Erin and I are getting a divorce and we're about to show up to my birthday. And we want everyone to we want you to know, it's okay. We're okay. We're moving forward as a family. And we want, please come to this party because it's not just my birthday party. This is it's more than that. And it was and I was so terrified to walk in there because it was this huge reveal.
Yeah.
This very emotional reveal. And it was actually kind of amazing because then we had that conversation one time. We didn't have to have it individually with all these friends and break the news to everyone. It was everyone knew it at once. If people wanted to talk about it and how surprised they were, they could talk about it then at this party. It was a really amazing and surprisingly great way to deal with it. Thank you, Mitch.
Mitch, can you reveal a little bit of what was spinning in your head and the intention behind that email? What clicked and shifted for you around that birthday party?
Well, a few things I would say is, one, again, this was about the echo, right? Erin and I had the pain. We joke sometimes that, or we did back then, when other people say, hey, we're getting a divorce, we sometimes think, congratulations, because Where you should have said, I'm sorry, was 2 years ago when they were in the thick of it and they couldn't figure out a light in the forest, right? Where we had Erin and I had done the emotional processing. And so you're almost going to that party comforting people. Yeah. And there's also this other gap where you're really trying to figure out how to express, no, it's not what you think. Because there's such a taboo or there's such a pejorative aspect to divorce that, they're coming to that situation with oftentimes a misunderstanding. So that was one of the aspects of it. And, Erin skips over the part that she was throwing me this party, right? Like she was doing all the work as far as getting the food and organizing the booze and the guest list and all that kind of stuff. And so that was still she was still being extremely generous. And you kind of wanted to point that out as the aspect of, hey, this is, everyone would be in Sad Dad's apartment, with a keg of beer if this were really a problem, right? And I think that's the last aspect that I would point out is it takes a village. It takes a village on a good divorce too.
Such a beautiful, inspiring story of how to come together as that healthy family. When we come back, Erin and Mitch, pioneers of the good divorce, are going to just talk a little bit about sort of the afterglow in these 8 years since that decision. Stay with us.
Follow us on Twitter @VoiceAmericaTRN. Get the lowdown on guests, new shows, and your favorites. That's VoiceAmericaTRN.
Before you call the lawyer, call the Good Divorce Coach. Give your family the gift of working with a certified divorce coach, a co-parenting specialist, and a mediator. Karen McNinney has the knowledge and skills to guide you through the full divorce journey, before, during, and after. It's one thing to get divorced. It's another to be divorced. The Good Divorce Coach will teach you and your partner how to be divorced with less drama, less destruction, and less debt. Visit thegooddivorcecoach.com to get in touch with Karen.
Voice America programs are now available on your favorite connected device, including Amazon, Alexa, and Google Home. Through streams with Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio, listening to your favorite show is as easy as saying the show name followed by the word podcast.
Hey, Alexa, play Finding Your Frequency podcast.
If that doesn't work, try adding on TuneIn or on iHeartRadio or on Apple Podcasts. Connect with us, and we'll connect with you. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is on LinkedIn. Get the first word about happenings with the network, where our next live event will be, and what's up with our hosts. Look up Voice America on LinkedIn.
Streaming live, the leader in Internet talk radio, voiceamerica.com.
Welcome back to the Good Divorce Show with Karen McNinney. Have a question for Karen or her guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5788. That's 866-472-5788. Now, back to the show with Karen.
Hello and welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are chatting with pioneers of the good divorce, Erin and Mitch, coming to us from LA. And part of what has been so, honestly, just quite enjoyable in chatting with both of you is this positive regard that you have for each other and this unification around your children. And what I need to remind our listeners and remind myself that unification doesn't always mean agreement. But bringing the tools of the relationship into the post-divorce relationship where there can be healthy discourse. I'm guessing that there's times where the two of you are in a co-parenting conversation where you might not be totally aligned, but you're able to stay in it. What does that look like, Mitch?
I guess my mind goes first to that kind of principle of trust, and respect that we have for each other. I definitely have it for Erin and for Erin's intentions for our kids. So, you lean on that also because, you're fallible. You're just your own individual with your kind of fixed perspective, and you need to broaden that perspective. And I've always, enjoyed Erin's perspective on everything, right? So just as a quick reminder in our background, we're both artists, and we're accustomed to looking at each other's artwork and making notes. And you understand from that, even from that model, that, the critique is, how do we get better? How does this painting get better? So I think that background helped when it comes to, hey, how does our co-parenting, how do these kids get better by sharing some of the things that we don't necessarily agree with? And I think for me, some of that happens by understanding each other's strengths. Erin mentioned the preschool that we went to. She found that preschool, so she found the current school where the kids are, where she has certain strengths. And so when I realized, hey, I might be out of my depth, or this is kind of aligned with Erin's strengths, I might disagree, but I might also defer. And I also have to feel comfortable bringing it up. Another one is our kids' health. Erin just has a good sense for it. I might be a little bit oblivious as far as like, hey, should they stay home or not? And I kind of lean on Erin a little bit, where there's certain kind of territories where I'll look to her, even if, if I disagree or if I have a different opinion. You got to work through that. You got to talk through that. And sometimes you got to defer because you trust them.
Right. How does that play out for you, Erin?
I think it's like that trust, but it's also like trusting myself to bring up, even if it comes to something that Mitch is sort of the specialist at. It's also important for me to, like, if something comes up on my intuition, like, I don't know, should we be doing this team and not another one? Like, it's important for me to still say that, we're still guiding our kids' ships together. Right.
I think
we're work in progress, Karen.
Work in progress. Well, and I think that is the amazing message. The relationship is still evolving and growing. You don't get divorced and amputate each other from your lives if you share children. So you might as well go for the other option, which is integration. And what I'm really hearing from both of you is just a healthy ego that is in check in regards to each other. If more couples, while they were married, recognize this is your strength, this is mine, we can complement each other, and then still take that and let that continue into the divorce relationship and appreciate one another for those superpowers that we may not share.
Yeah. And I also think that, there's something about our relationship as, divorced co-parenters, in that we have this, like, in our marriage there's sort of, like Mitch was kind of talking about, we were like holding on so tight and there was this gridlock, and it was hard to, like, I think it was hard to navigate our own triggers within that relationship. And there's something about, like, now we have this relationship, but we have distance between each other. And I think it's actually makes it easier for us to navigate things that come up between the two of us, because we're not in the same house together. There's stuff that we're navigating as, like, this ex-couple, but there's a lot tied into it because of, our own histories and dynamics and how we want to move forward with our kids.
And I think, Karen, to piggyback on, again, on Erin's statements, one of the things that a huge gift of the divorce that Erin's story kind of illustrates is intention. We both got clear intention. And one of that was the intention of how we want to treat each other, right? When we were gridlocked in the divorce, a lot of that behavior was accidental. And a lot of those slights and that resentment were unconscious and accidental. And it was a terrible pattern. And the space that Erin talks about allows us to have a little more intention about each other. And, another principle that we talked about earlier is just that kind of manners, right? Like how you talk about how you talk to each other, how you treat each other. And, just because there's that intensity of parenting, don't take those things for granted, how you treat each other.
And reminding people, we get we move towards divorce because the marriage is struggling and the relationship is perhaps eroding. And so the intent of the divorce is to improve the relationship, not actually make it worse. And I think that is the biggest paradigm shift that we're really broadcasting through the Good Divorce Show, is that you can get divorced to improve the relationship and improve your lives of you and your children. Otherwise, we just stay where we're at. And chances are, when we're already questioning the marriage, it's because we are in search of improvement. Now, the two of you have children going between two homes, but they also have a pet that goes between two homes, which is probably a whole nother layer of negotiation. And I would love to hear, what's the dog's name?
Moose.
Moose. Tell me the story of Moose.
Mitch, do you want to tell it? Because
this is 100% deferring to each other's strengths. And I give Erin all the credit for this. So I am not a dog person. I have zero interest in being a dog person. And I remember, Essie gets a lot of credit. Our daughter gets a lot of credit for it. But our son was the one who killed me emotionally. So, going back to it, Erin was living in our tiny little house, and I was living in an apartment, and I was traveling a ton. And our son came up to me, and I don't know how old he was, maybe 6, 7. Daddy, can we get a dog? Nah, I'm grumpy. No, we're not getting a dog. I don't have a yard. I travel all the time. We're not getting a dog, and that's that. And he's like, oh. I go, what's up, buddy? And he goes, well, I wanted a dog while I was little. And then we go to my hometown, Central Valley, California, on Easter, and I hire my best friend's son to give my daughter some soccer lessons. So they're at a park, they're getting soccer lessons. I get a call from Matthew, Mitch, your daughter found a dog. And it's nobody. She's going all over. She's knocking on doors. She's going up to everybody. It's nobody's dog. Mitch, she wants to bring the dog in the car. And I'm like, I repeat, do not let her bring that dog in the damn car. Next thing you know, he drives up. But you got to know our daughter, she's hard to stop. And then I get on the phone with Erin. And I remember distinctly, I'm in the backyard of my mom's house. I'm like, Erin, we have a problem. This is not good. I don't want these kids getting touched to this little mutt. And Erin is like, hold on a second here. Let's just talk this through. How would it work? And I'm like, oh no. Oh no.
She's thinking about it. Erin, pick up the story.
So,
sorry, Erin, go ahead.
So basically, just to give like a quick bit of backstory, that Essie, our daughter, totally manifested this dog. She since Cole's initial question, they'd both been asking about a dog for a very long time. And then her stories became very specific. So what would happen if a puppy walked up to me at a party? What would happen if a puppy walked up to me at a park? Would we be able to keep it? And I was like, I know how you work. I'm not even going to address this question. I refused to even, agree to anything. And I was like, no, we're not getting a dog. And then sure enough, a puppy walked up to her at a park, just like she had predicted. And it was, they looked for posted signs. They checked a Facebook page. There's a specific lost dog Facebook page in Mitch's hometown, and it wasn't listed anywhere. And we're like, okay, so I guess we have this dog.
Oh, dear.
I know, but it's been amazing. I actually call the dog my third baby, and it's just such a sweetheart, and it stays with the kids. So it goes back and forth between Mitch's house and mine as the kids do. And I think the thing that's really great about it is it supplies this added layer of consistency. Mm-hmm. And then also neither of us ever have to worry about a dog sitter, because it's, if I have the kids, I'm not going to be traveling. And if Mitch has the kids, it's the same. So we're sort of both freed up to not be dog owners.
Another benefit of the two household family. And Mitch, has your heart softened to Moose?
I told Erin yesterday it was the weirdest thing because I was nice to Moose and no one was around. No, look, the dog is so adorable. It's out of control. He wins over anybody and everybody, non-dog lovers and even dogs who don't like little mutts. So don't tell the kids, but yeah, the dog is great.
The dog is great. How long has Moose been in the family?
Like a little over 3 years, I think.
Long enough to know he gets to stay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It has been a total delight to hear a story of hope and collaboration and knowing that the good divorce doesn't mean it's just all easy. There are still all the struggles of co-parenting and being in a relationship with someone. I'm going to ask each of you, if you were to try to synthesize down sort of a bumper sticker statement, a little nugget of wisdom and advice that our listeners could take with them as they forge their own path towards a good divorce. And I always remind people, it's never too late to have a good divorce. So maybe you're down the road and you're listening to Erin and Mitch, that there might be something that you can still apply to your own life. What comes to mind for each of you?
I think for me, like here, kind of hearing us talk about all of this out loud, at this point, first of all, I feel really proud of both of us for how we handled it. And I feel like if there's anything that I have taken away from it, the most meaningful thing has really been like, it really comes down to, for us, it came down to the kids and like really prioritizing them in a way that made our actions very, like, it just made anything that needed to happen straightforward.
Beautiful. How about you, Mitch?
I guess I would say that, your family and your joy can look a lot different than what you think it might look like. And it's yours to make.
Yes. Spoken like a true artist. The story is ours to write. The art is ours to make. And you have and continue to just foster this beautiful family story. Thank you, Erin and Mitch, for opening your home and your heart and sharing the story with listeners. And to all of you tuned in today to the Good Divorce Show, just remember, everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Good Divorce Show. We hope today's episode has helped you find a kinder, more sensible, and less expensive path through the divorce journey. Until we talk again, have a beautiful week.